Good morning, Greene County and surrounding communities. Daniel here with ZCI with my friend Britni Hurst from PuroClean.
Good morning.
She and I recently partnered up on a fire loss that they got called out on. There was a lot of roof damage where the fire was going up through the shingles. She called us out. We got there same day to tarp it up, but it got me thinking that she could probably share some valuable information with you guys to help you avoid that type of scenario, to prepare for it, what to do after it. So I'm going to start by just asking her a few questions, and hopefully you guys find value in this and we can avoid the pitfalls or fires for you guys and your family. Okay, so Britni, the first thing I thought would be valuable is how best to prepare, how to have the family have a plan in case this does happen.
Yes, so perfect place to start, Daniel. So in preparing for a fire, step number one is make sure that you have working smoke detectors in the home and that they're not expired. Most people don't recognize that a smoke detector only has a 10-year shelf life from the date of manufacturing. So not from the day you purchase the smoke detector and put it up, but from the day that it was actually made. You can find that information by looking on the smoke detector. Second thing is test all of those smoke detectors and make sure that the batteries are working. Doing this on a quarterly basis or even every 6 months is the best thing. When creating a plan, making sure that your children as well as our fur babies have some place to go and we know who's getting who. My husband and I, we have 3 children, so we have a plan set in motion. So if anything were to happen, he knows what kid he's grabbing and the dog. I know what children I'm grabbing, and we both have 2 exit strategies out of the house. Our oldest son is 11, so he knows if he gets out of the house before us, where to go. We have a meeting point that he is supposed to put his hand on. In the event that the fire gets out of control, it is far enough away from the home that we feel he will be safe. The last thing we want is people going into the house because the children are in the backyard and we're looking for them in the front yard. So creating that plan, practicing it, and making sure that you have 2 exit points out of the home is very important.
Nice. I wouldn't have thought about the smoke detectors, so do you tie that with any like holidays or like easy to remember?
Yeah, so we always say whenever the time changes. So when you spring forward or fall back, that's a great time to check those smoke detector batteries just because it's an easy one to remember.
That's good. So during the time change, check the smoke detectors. Now some will have it'll start beeping if they're going bad. Do they all do that, or are there some that will just die on their own?
The majority of them will beep. However, we all have those moments where you can't figure out what smoke detector is beeping, so you just take the batteries out because inevitably it happens at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I've done that.
Everybody's done that. And how many times do we forget to put those batteries back? So if there are no batteries in it, it's not going to do anything.
Right.
So again, just making sure that you constantly are checking those and that you don't forget to replace them if you take them out in the middle of the night.
That's good. Very good. And then biggest causes / like how can we educate our kids to whatever the biggest causes are for them to avoid?
Yes, so cooking fires are the #1 cause of fires in residential areas. With that, we always just encourage people, talk to your children about cooking safety. Don't get too close to the stove. If you have long hair, if you're in loose-fitting clothing, tie it back, pay attention to what's going on. My 3-year-old son loves to help us cook, and he is forever pushing a chair up to the stove and leaning over it. So again, just really paying attention to that, knowing that children are curious. We also always like to tell homeowners the stove and the stove top are not storage space. Do not put last night's pizza in the stove to keep it until tomorrow. Do not use your oven as a place to hide things from guests that just randomly show up. And don't leave anything, even a kitchen towel, on top of the stove. That teaches children that it's not hot and they don't recognize that it could be hot in a split second. The other thing is paying attention to pets. Again, so many times we respond to fires where they believe the dog jumped onto the front of the stove with the knobs and accidentally ignited something. So your gas stoves and your electric stoves, just paying attention to those knobs. You can buy safety features to put over those so children and pets can't accidentally turn something on.
Okay. I'm guilty of the pizza box also, so.
Most people are.
Moving to, if God forbid something does happen, everyone's safe, they're out of the house, what are the next steps?
So the first thing to know when dealing with a fire is it doesn't move quickly. So many times people call us and they say, I had a small kitchen fire. I've got, a group coming over this weekend. How quickly can this be cleaned up? It will not be cleaned up that quickly, even if it is small. So if it's something you plan to get insurance involved in, reach out to your agent right away, but also work with the fire department to make sure the scene has been released. That's the first question we're going to ask when somebody calls us after a fire. Your agent should have a number of reputable people that they can recommend to you.
Such as Britni.
If they do not, you can go online, you can take a look at things using reviews, the Better Business Bureau, that. However, we do always say look for those recommendations. Mm-hmm. Then from there, recognize that there are going to be a lot of moving parts. Somebody to come in to tarp the roof, somebody to come in and take the textiles if they need taken. We create lists of what's called salvageable versus non-salvage. So certain things, there is no reason to spend the money cleaning it. We all have insurance limits. Work with your contractors because they know what best should be cleaned and can be cleaned. There are also things that matter more to you. So if the missus would like her wedding dress back, knowing that it might not fully come clean, but she doesn't care. It's going to go to the best that it possibly can. Mm-hmm. So keeping in your head kind of a list of things, or even better, going through the home prior to a loss and filming everything, opening drawers, opening cabinets, having the model numbers, keeping receipts or even documentation of receipts for high-end items. TVs are so expensive these days. So knowing what you bought, when you bought that TV, and what you paid for it.
Right. We always recommend this after every loss is photos, filming. I've never told someone to film. That's really good. Photos, filming, receipts, because it's such an emotional time that you're not going to remember everything that happens. People start cleaning up and you'll think like, oh, what was in that stack? Was that there? Was this there? So it's really, really important that you document that on your phone as soon as possible before anything gets moved, before anything gets changed, saving your receipts for anything you purchase, because this can all be a part of the insurance claim. And the more you know, the better the documentation, the better for you as things move along. So let's say someone has, like you said, a small kitchen fire, which I think grease is some of the hardest to clean up. Is that right?
Yes.
So let's say they have a small kitchen fire. What would the timeline be like to be, back to normal, everything cleaned?
That is all dependent upon what can be cleaned. So specifically, we're going to look at a kitchen. That is one of the worst places to have a fire, because can the cabinets be saved? So can we get them cleaned appropriately? Or is this something where we're going to have to replace them? A lot of times you see upper cabinets and lower cabinets in a home. Do they still make those cabinets, and can we get them matched? So that's something, especially right now with where things are at in the construction industry, you're 6 to 8 weeks out. So those are some of the questions we want to ask on the front end. Start test cleaning, see where things go. We also have to make sure that we are documenting everything appropriate for insurance coverage. A lot of times adjusters are no longer coming on site. After COVID, they just recognized that it wasn't necessary. However, they will sometimes send out a fire investigator. So again, making sure that scene is released for us to touch it, but encouraging people, always take pictures, document everything, and just expect in your head that it could be an 8 to 10 week, 6 month to a year process, depending on the extent of the damages.
Right, and that's a very good point about building materials in general. Anytime anything's damaged right now, the cost is crazy high. The wait time is crazy high. We went from a week or two for siding last year to 5-6 weeks to 12-14 weeks for a door or a window. So wait times are crazy. Just expect that. Be patient with Britni, people like myself, as we wait on products or have to pay a lot more than we did last year. And moving on to the last issue, me, I have to talk about a roof at some point. So we're going to do that here. The one that she called us out to, there were multiple spots in the roof that the fire had burned through the shingles, roof completely totaled. But what I didn't know, and I learned there, was that the fire department will often cut holes in the roof to let that attic release the heat, release the flame, so they can put it out instead of it spreading throughout the attic. So you definitely are going to need a roofer immediately if what's beneath that is going to be salvageable. On that day that we were called out, there was a huge storm coming. Luckily, we were able to get there before the rain got there, but If Britni hadn't known or the agent hadn't known that the roof needs to be addressed right away, it would have caused more water damage inside there on top of the fire damage, which of course nobody wants. So make sure that after that claim, you have a good mitigation person like Britni and PuroClean to come there, clean up, start documenting, walk you through the process, make sure you have good contractors to start mitigating for further damage where you can, repairing what you can. They boarded up the garage, made sure everything was safe. So all this stuff is super important, with the most being how to avoid it, how to prepare, because we don't want you guys to go through any of this. So teach the kids, have a plan, know where your valuables are, try to avoid keeping a lot of stuff in your attic where it can spread. And yeah, just be careful. Britni, if you have anything else to add?
The only other thing, Daniel, that I would add to that is, yes, making sure that what is stored in your attic, you know what's up there. So many times we clean out the attic maybe once every 10 years, but there are some very high dollar items up there. Again, a wedding dress, something that is not of a dollar value, but it's of sentimental value.
Right.
So looking into that and just preparing on the front end rather than the back end.
Right. Nobody wants to think about the worst case, but it's much better to think about it now and avoid it than to be thinking about it when it's too late. So be safe. Thanks.
Thank you.